absolute pleasure to introduce a very good friend of mine, Omar Mourad, who is the class of 1T7 valedictorian. For those of you who don't know Omar, I'm going to give you a bit of background prior to his speech. Omar did his undergraduate degree at McMaster University, and upon enrolling at U of T, decided to self-appoint himself the 1T7 speech master. And he essentially became a full legend because prior to every exam in our pre-clerkship, he would write this very eloquent speech that he would post on our class Facebook group. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share one of my personal favorites. So this was on May 16th, 2014, and this was prior to our final Aussie in first year. So, passing is not a sometime thing, it's an all-the-time thing. You don't pass once in a while, and you don't do things right once in a while, you do them right all the time. Passing is a habit, and unfortunately, so is failing. Every time a medical student goes to apply his trade, he's got to evaluate from the ground up, from the soles of the feet, right to the top of the head. Every inch of their patient needs to be evaluated. Some of us use our heads, that's okay. You've got to be smart and number one in any business. But importantly, you've got to practice with your heart and with every fiber of your body. We're lucky enough to be with a lot of heart and a lot of head, and we'll never give up, not even for a second. In truth, I've never known a medical student worth their salt who in the long run, deep down in his heart, didn't appreciate the grind, the discipline. There is something good in good medical students that yearns for discipline and the harsh reality of the field. I firmly believe that any medical student's finest hour is that moment when they have worked their hearts out and lie exhausted on a patient bed, victorious.
In addition to his wonderful speeches, Omar has supported our class in many other ways. He was our M&U and MD course representative, helping us preparing for our exam and advocating on our behalf. He made us laugh in his role as a lead in Daffodil, U of T's medical student-produced musical. He was one of the Orientation Week coordinators for the class of 1T8. And above all else, he has always been a great friend and colleague. It really wouldn't be right if our medical school career didn't end with a farewell from our fearless speech leader. And so in that vein, it is my pleasure to introduce the valedictorian for the class of 1T7, the soon-to-be Dr. Omar Mourad.
Hello everyone. I'd like to start off by giving a quick update on the asbestos in OSB. You can ask other people, don't sweat it. So as mentioned, my name is Omar, and I was fortunate enough to be selected as the class of 1T7's valedictorian. When Billy emailed me, letting me know that I had been elected, a few thoughts ran through my head. The first, oh my God, I'm popular. Which was followed by moments of me walking around my bedroom, high-fiving the mirror, because ironically no one was around. The second thought came in a few minutes later, which was a crippling realization that I had to now write a valedictorian speech, which is not something I had any experience doing. So, when I started writing the speech yesterday, 3 weeks ago, I did the first thing any respectable person would do in my position. I typed, how to write a valedictorian speech. The second thing I did was type it a second time, because I discovered I didn't actually know how to spell valedictorian. It's at this point that I'd like to make a quick disclaimer. There will be many points, like the one that just occurred, where many of you will be asking yourselves, whether you're faculty, family, or even students who voted for me, how did this guy get elected to be valedictorian? To that I would like to say, it's too late now, you can't take it. My research, my search, led me to the conclusion that every good valedictorian speech seems to have a few things in common. Some comedy to lighten the mood. A reading of Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. And a few inspirational words where I remind you how great you all are. And then I tell you all the amazing things that you can accomplish if you put your mind to it. And while this all sounded well and good in theory, there were a few problems on my end. One, I refused to debase my speech with comedy. There's no basis for it. Two, the only Dr. Seuss book I own is Green Eggs and Ham. And I'm pretty sure the moral of that story was that if you pester someone enough, you can get them to eat rotten food. Now that I'm a doctor, I'd like to formally recommend that none of you eat rotten food. At this point, I was feeling really low because I was ready to go for two. So I needed to come in strong in the last 2 points. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't put something together that didn't sound too overplayed or cheesy. So my speech is over, thank you. The big problem for me is that I didn't feel much like an inspirational figure being up here. First, I could do with being a little taller, because that seems to help in those movies I watch. The honest truth is that you guys don't need someone to tell you that you're all amazing, or really smart, or if you work really hard, you can accomplish anything. Because if you didn't already believe that, you wouldn't be here. Thank you. Now, you may have chosen me to be up here to inspire you. The reality is that the only reason I'm up here is because of how much you inspired me. When I wrote that first inspirational speech on the 127 Facebook group before our first exam, it wasn't to motivate the class. It was to try to inspire myself to keep up with you. In those first 8 weeks leading up to that exam, I learned very quickly how incredible the people I was sharing the lecture hall with me were. And the years that followed only added to my sense of awe. There are people in this crowd who are presidents of medical governing bodies, star athletes, musical prodigies, people who fought in front of the government for human rights. There are people in this crowd who got a master's or a PhD while doing their MD, as you saw. There's people who came in with a master's and PhD. Half of you probably got published just sitting here. Meanwhile, I have my name on one. Well, I'm counting. Some of you did all that while starting or raising a family. In these 2 months alone, half the class is or will be getting married. Meanwhile, one of my greatest recent accomplishments includes not putting pants on for an entire weekend. Which is harder than it's easy. Over the past 4 years, I have had the privilege to share some of those incredible accomplishments in our lives. More importantly, I have also experienced the same disappointments and challenges that we have overcome to be here today. Please raise your hand if you have failed any major exam over the last 4 years. No, this is actually your reaction I saw before. So some of you probably noted my hand was up. My parents will also be noting this fact for the first time. Sure they're going to talk to anyone so late. This is not information that I ever readily shared with anyone in the class, but now I'm telling it with you all. I actually didn't pass the first exam of medical school. You can imagine the impact that had on someone who is still suffering from imposter syndrome and feeling like he didn't belong. I was ashamed of myself, and I was worried what people would think of me if they ever found out. So I did everything in my power to hide this fact. I ended up creating my own survival guide in my head, called the Omar Survival Guide. Some examples include: 1, put on a smile and talk in complex medical jargon, so people think you're always in the know. 2, just randomly throw facts, so people think you're intelligent and well-read. 3, things get really dicey. Hide in the washroom until it all blows over. The thing is, even after I passed the remaining exams, the feeling like I didn't deserve to be here never really went away. And I think that this applies to a lot of us. Maybe not all, Curtis. We're so worried about what other people may think of us if we falter or if we do something wrong. So we do everything we can to create an illusion of perfection. We compare ourselves to our immediate peers who seem infallible, and we freak ourselves out over our perceived failures. I know, for myself, this fear led me to do, in hindsight, some ridiculous things. Nothing dangerous for patients, right? And the faculty were starting to sweat. But it would be things like trying to Google what a certain abbreviation means on the phone under the table during morning rounds, hoping no one would see because I was too embarrassed to ask. Or avoiding asking for help because I was worried what people might think. They might think that I'm not as strong as the other medical students. During teaching, I would strive to answer as many questions as possible, hoping every right answer would hide the answers I didn't know. And so I would build up this facade more and more, convincing myself it was an armor, that it would protect me from the persistent questions as to whether or not I belonged. In the end, building up this facade, this armor, didn't make me invulnerable. It made me mobile. In elementary school, I struggled. I had problems with attention and motivation, and at one point I was in serious danger of repeating 5th grade. My parents refused to give up on me. If anything, they redoubled their efforts, and their belief in me allowed me to believe in myself. In high school, it was my teachers and coaches who saw my potential and encouraged me to excel. If it wasn't for them, I would have settled with chronic underachievement. In university, my challenges were less academic. My parents had just moved overseas, and I felt alone. It was the friends who became my pillar of support. They encouraged me to get involved with student life in ways I never thought of before. Through them, I enjoyed the various clubs and institutions that would shape who I am today. In medical school, my mentors weren't the ones who complimented my strengths, but who showed me how to improve on my weaknesses. Those weaknesses I tried so hard to hide. They were not only available when I needed help, they encouraged me to seek them out. Looking back on my life, I am here today because people helped me, not in spite of it. Our journey to this day, to this room, has been paved by the people who spent the time to reach out and influence our lives. It is in large part through their actions that we leave here today as doctors. As people whose job depends solely on patients letting us help them, it's a bit ironic that we are often the people most ready to do the same. The reality is that we will always be playing myself out, and we will always do our best to mask it from the world. What I do hope, however, is every now and then, when you're going through one of those moments, where you try to shield yourself from the rest of the world, you'll remember today. Maybe you'll let yourself feel a little vulnerable and reach out to those around you. You are all incredible people, but we are none of us perfect. Together we can reach further and achieve more than we can ever come alone. And it's in this spirit that I'd like to close by saying what a privilege it has been to learn with all of you. You have made me a far better medical student, doctor, and person. Your actions for at least 4 years, and I imagine for your entire lives, have pushed the people around you to do better, to be better. I may be at this podium, but you are my valedictorian. That doesn't mean I'm going to be sharing the award with you. If you want to add it to CV, don't stop me. The school, whatever. Seriously though, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be in this graduating class. And I certainly wouldn't be at this podium. And for that, I want to thank you.